Hi, and thank you for joining us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and other important aspects of being self-employed, working for yourself, running a small business. So today we are going to talk about CIS and when you will get your refund. Before I do, if I could please ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information should you need to, as well as being able to access other information that we have available on a whole host of different topics, all aimed at supporting you in your self-employment. If you look in our playlist, that is how we've catalogued the information. So if you look for the playlist that describes your circumstances, then in that playlist, you will find the information that is aimed at your situation. If I could also ask if you find the information helpful or if it's the topics that you are interested in, then please do take a moment to like the video too, because this helps us understand where to aim our answers at and which content that you're finding the most helpful. So back then to the question, when will I receive my CIS tax refund? So you will remember, so CIS Construction Industry Scheme, and CIS is a tax that's almost like a withholding tax, a set amount that's deducted from the money that's paid from your contractor. So you will invoice your contractor, and say, for example, if you have if they owe you £100 for your labour, then when they make the payment, if you are standard deduction at 20%, then they would deduct 20%, so £20 from the £100. They would pay the remaining £80 to you, and the £20 they would pay to HMRC, which in effect goes on your account for your self-assessment tax that becomes due. So in order to receive your CIS refund and actually confirm whether you are due a refund, then the first thing that you will need to do is to complete your self-assessment tax return. And we've talked about this previously, and I will link to that video towards the end of this one if you want to watch that one too. So by submitting your self-assessment tax return, you're telling HMRC what profit you have made from your self-employment. So to do that, you're telling them your total sales or turnover, different jargon, same thing. And it's important to mention, because of course we're talking about CIS subcontractors here, that the sales or the turnover that you must include there is the full amount that you invoice. So in that earlier example, when I said if they owed you £100 and you invoiced them £100, then although they may have deducted £20 CIS and only paid you 80, it's the £100 that is your sale. That is the full value of the sale that you need to include there in your sales. So you've got your total sales and all of your expenses that you've incurred in generating those sales. And then that take the expenses off of the sales. That gives you your taxable profit, and that is what your tax liability is calculated on. So if you are using software to do your tax return, then that will calculate, once you've completed the tax return and included all the information, it will calculate your tax calculation for you. So therefore it will work out how much income tax that you need to pay, how much national insurance, both class 4 and class 2 national insurance, and therefore it will come up with your total liability. So against that, what you're also going to be telling HMRC in your tax return is how much CIS deductions have been made, how much CIS you've suffered is it's sometimes termed as well. So with that, you're going to work out how much CIS tax has been deducted by the contractors that have paid you. Now, when the contractor pays you on a monthly basis, when they've made payments, they should be giving you a statement that tells you the total amount that you invoiced and how much tax that they've deducted. And that is where you will get that figure from. It's important actually also to mention, because on the deduction statement, what will also be assessed is if you have recharged materials that you've used on a job to the contractor, then you will likely know that those will be outside of needing to have CIS deductions made, but they still need to be included in your sales. But you also need to make sure you include in the expenses the cost. So let's think back to that original example where you've invoiced your contractor £100 labour. Let's say, for example, you also paid £50 at a builder's merchant for some materials, and the contractors to pay that. So therefore, on that invoice, you're now going to be charging them £100 for labour plus £50 for the materials, but they're only going to make the CIS deduction on the labour, so they still would only deduct £20. But when you come to complete your self-assessment tax return, you need to make sure that that £50 is included in the sale, because it is income that you've had, but also in the expenses. So unless you've marked up that the amount of the materials, then they'll offset each other, which makes sense because that £50 isn't profit. You paid it out and then you recharged it to your contractor. If you had, for example, paid £50 for the materials but charged your contractor £60 for the materials, then you would obviously have made £10 profit on that, so that would become taxable profit. So if you'd done nothing else for the whole year, and you'd done the £100 labour plus £50 recharged for materials, and you hadn't put any markup, then your profit would be £100, because you'd have £150 sale and £50 cost of sale for the materials that you'd paid. So that's important to mention. So back then to your tax calculation, and you've now submitted your self-assessment tax return, which has calculated your total tax liability. And as part of your self-assessment tax return, you've also told HMRC how much CIS has been deducted. And then basically the two are compared. And if the CIS that's been deducted is more than your liability, then in effect, you've now made an overpayment, because by including the CIS tax that's been deducted on your self-assessment tax return, you're bringing that into your self-assessment account in effect, and the liability is going to be deducted from your account. So the excess in that scenario is and that's why you will hear CIS subcontractors referring to having their rebate at the end of the year. So that is when the CIS that's been deducted through the year is more than the liability that is due. Now, it's not, of course, guaranteed that you'll have a rebate, because as you can see, we're looking at the liability that you have incurred, so the tax and national insurance that's due on the profit that you've made, and then comparing that with the CIS that's been deducted. So it might be that the liability is more than the CIS that's been deducted if you had a high profit, for example, or perhaps if only some of your work was through the CIS scheme. Those are some examples, but what you need to understand, of course, is everybody's individual circumstances is different. So everybody's tax calculation will be different, and everybody's deductions that have been made will be different. So once that self-assessment tax return is submitted, that will then tell HMRC what your liability for tax and national insurance is on your taxable profit, and how much CIS has been deducted. And if it turns out that the CIS deducted is more than the liability, and thereby you've had an overpayment, then that will then be refunded to you. So as part of the self-assessment tax return, you should also be letting HMRC know within the form the bank details that you would like that refunded to. And generally speaking, once that is submitted, you could expect to have the refund in your bank account in around 7 to 10 days, typically on average. HMRC do say that it can take up to 30 days. Sometimes they have to carry out checks, and that can cause a little bit of a delay. But if after 30 days you haven't received your refund, then you should contact HMRC. You can at any time log back into your account, to your gateway account that you used to submit your tax return, and that will show you whether the repayment's due or whether the return's been processed. And if you can see the amount showing as an overpayment on the overview of your tax account, then this likely means that it hasn't picked up and been processed automatically. If you can see nothing outstanding, but then you go into your repayment section, it may show a pending, and that just basically means it's been held up for checks. Nothing to worry about if it's held up for checks. It's completely normal. It doesn't mean there's anything the matter, as long as obviously you've accurately submitted your sales and your expenses, and all of your expenses are allowable business expenses, and your CIS deducted matches with the vouchers that you've had, then there's really nothing to worry about. And if HMRC need any further information, they will contact you. But as I say, if you've not received the repayment after 30 days, then you should contact HMRC to find out why there is a delay. So hopefully this helps you to understand, and hopefully this answers the question, when will I receive my CIS refund? That basically it depends when you submit your tax return, but once your tax return is submitted, then if you are due a refund, it will come through to you. So thank you again for watching. I hope this is helpful, and as I mentioned earlier, please do take a moment to subscribe to our channel, and please do like the video if you found the information helpful. Thank you. Goodbye.